Okay, let's get to a little thing we call the mailbag. And here's how you get in. It's very, very simple. At John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is my Instagram. 2 Fs. Fire in those DMs. At John Middlekauff, fire in those DMs. As a Seahawks fan, I can't help but worry following Drew Lock's Monday night masterclass and that Pete and the management might look to keep both him and Geno for another year instead of drafting a first-round quarterback in next year's draft. Chris Ballard used to say this a lot when everyone wanted him to draft a quarterback in the first round instead of like band-aiding it with Rivers and Wentz and Jacoby, Matt Ryan. Obviously, some of those guys were bad, but he's like, you guys do understand that if we're not drafting high, I got to really like a guy at pick 22 to just pull the trigger and draft him in the first round. Do you want me to just draft Kenny Pickett or Mac Jones because you guys wanted me to draft a quarterback? Seattle's going to go, if I had to bet right now, they're 7-7, looking at their schedule. I'd say 9-7, or excuse me, 9-8 would be my guess. Well, if you're 9-8, probably get in the playoffs. I mean, there's a decent chance them and the Rams both make the playoffs. That means you're drafting at like pick 21, 22. Well, what if there's not a good quarterback there? And what if how high? I'm not opposed to like trading up and getting a guy that you really like, but I don't think it's crazy. I mean, as of right now, 2 years, they've won 16 games with Geno and Drew Lock. If their defense was just a little bit better, if Witherspoon comes back, if they keep Leonard Williams, they add another pass rusher, their team's got a lot of talent. Now, the quarterback position obviously is not ideal, but just because you trade up and get, Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels doesn't mean those guys are going to be any good. We see it all the time. So I actually think they're in a decent spot. They have a ton of good players all over the roster, a lot of young impact guys, ton of good offensive weapons. Part of the reason you can compete with Drew Lock and Geno Smith, you got DK, you got Jackson Smith, you got Tyler Lockett, you got Kenneth Walker, you got some young tackles. Disley's not bad. I mean, you got players. I listened to all your shows. I already like this guy. Considering the Panthers' recent struggles, plus only having 5 fans at their game, it was windy and it was cold and it was rainy against the Falcons. The overall state of the franchise. Do you think there's a possibility of relocating the team to a different state, like Austin, for example, especially with the absence of state income tax and the fact that the city is becoming more and more popular? Well, I don't hate your mindset. The problem is, the state of Texas, Jerry is one of the heavy hitters in the league. The Cowboys are the league's biggest brand. Why would they want another team in Texas? I think they would block that. And Houston is one of the biggest cities in America, already has a team. I think both those teams would vehemently throw their bodies, in front of that. I don't have, I do this kind of live, so I don't have the Charlotte stats, but isn't it one of the fastest growing cities in America? To me, the market, the Jags with Jacksonville much more likely to relocate than Carolina. The problem in Carolina is they just suck. When they were good and hosted the NFC Championship years ago, like it was okay. You can't be that bad. If the Cowboys were that bad, if the Eagles were that bad, if the Niners were that bad, and a game was rainy and wet, people wouldn't go. I never bemoan the fan that attends games because let's face it, in the football, it's way easier to sit at home and watch a game. And honestly, football is the greatest thing that's ever happened to sports television. It's made for TV. Like you go to an NBA game, sometimes it's actually better than watching it on TV. Like basketball games are awesome. You go to the right baseball game, it can be one, it's just kind of an event, get out in the sun in the summer, have a beer. A football game, I'd argue, is better on TV than it is in person. So if you're going to get me to go to the game, it better be a decent product. And the Falcons, Carolina, I swear to God, I'm not making this up. If I lived in the area, right? Obviously, I wouldn't fly to Carolina to go to that game. But let's just say hypothetically, you buy me a ticket. What would I have to pay you, John Middlekauff, to attend that game? I'll take care of the travel. I will take care of the sleeping arrangements, get you in a nice hotel. I think my number would start I wouldn't do it for 10 grand. My time, my weekend, it'd probably be, I swear to God, 25K cash that they couldn't tax me on minimum. And I'd probably need you to set up a golf round at a country club or something. That's how bad that game would be. Like, I would have gone last night for free if I would have known how awesome the game would be. But in the wet, in the wind, especially if I'm sitting outside, football game, man, that'd be pretty miserable. So I can't. I have no issue with no one showing up. Why in your right mind would you go to that game, even if you're a season ticket holder? Because you can't give the tickets away. We've all been a fan of when teams are bad and known. I've never been a season ticket holder. I don't even know why technically in this modern day age you'd be a season ticket holder. It's much easier. Shout out to my friends at Game Time, just to get tickets when you want to go. Now I get it from a business. If you have a business, entertain clients, makes sense. But to me, if you're just a fan of a team, just buy tickets when you want to go. Now maybe there are other perks that I'm missing, and I get it if it's a family thing. Like if you've been in a city with a basketball or a baseball team or even a football team, but are you going to every game? Football, I guess technically you could. Basketball or baseball, no chance. But I think Carolina's there to stay. I think they want him in that market. Could be wrong, but that market to me is a lot different than, let's say, Jacksonville. Another struggling Steelers fan here. Going forward, where do you think the organization should go at quarterback? I'm pretty much out on Kenny, and our backups make me want to vomit. I agree. Do you think that we should focus our 2024 draft or go for someone like Kirk Cousins in free agency? I think it's difficult when it comes to Kenny Pickett because you just drafted him at pick 20, and this is his second year. So he's going to be on the team next year. You're not going to draft a guy in the first round. That's just not happening. I would be stunned. I do think it's on the table to be sniffing around at guys, right? Kirk Cousins, can I get him for cheap? Would I trade for Justin Fields and then have a competition between Fields and Kenny Pickett? Do something like that. I think that's the most realistic option with you guys. To me, the biggest question though with your franchise is like, what do you do with the coach? Do you just do you fire him? Because I don't know about you. I think it's over. And I'm not a Mike Tomlin hater. I think the Chargers should immediately hire Mike Tomlin just to get some respect, just to get a real coach. And you'd be like, Middlekauff, he sucks. Like, you know what the Chargers would do for Mike Tomlin? But listen, I think you are much more likely to kind of like try to sign a Geno Smith type. Now he's under contract, but you know what I mean. Baker Mayfield, someone to come in and compete with Kenny Pickett. I think that's the most realistic option. Question for the pod. Are highlight quarterbacks overvalued in the social media era? All we see are highlight reels, but we never see the misreads that made them scramble and make some incredible plays for 20 yards when they actually left yards on the field. It's hard to criticize passes that are never made. Maybe with fans, and I think Justin Fields is a good example. If you just watch some highlights of Justin Fields, you go, holy shit. Look at this guy scramble around, throw the ball down the field. The problem is NFL teams do not evaluate you off highlight packages. They evaluate you off all 22 tape that is silent with scouts, general managers, and then the coaching staff in a room, usually with a chew, a Zinin, a Gatorade Zero, their feet up, and some music blaring in the background, just watching you play football. And so listen, yeah, it creates a lot of false media narratives because a lot of people that talk for a living, if you don't know anyone in the NFL, you're just giving your opinions that usually are probably not great. If you are talking to people in the league and then forming those opinions off that, I've said it forever, it's why Colin's so good. When he went all in on Baker Mayfield was not going to work, or Zach Wilson's not going to work, he's using his opinion, but he's also talking to like 3 or 4 GMs. You think those GMs probably tell him, yeah, we don't like him. That character doesn't. So he forms his opinion knowing what the league thinks. I'm not saying it always works and not every guy's right, but if you do that more often than not, it helps. Last year, everyone would act like Sauce Gardner was the next Deion Sanders. I talked to a guy in the league this year. They're like, we think he's a little overrated. He won't fucking tackle. He can't really handle the quicker guys. And look this year, what happened? Derek Stingley is now on the field. I would take Stingley for the next 5 years over Sauce. And I'm not acting like Sauce is some scrub, but the hype machine of the way, and I'm guilty of this too, that we all do it. It's why that I try to be measured when I talk to about Purdy. I don't fucking know if Purdy's going to be some Hall of Fame player, but based on his sample size, he's he's the best quarterback since the 49ers have had since Steve Young. And Jeff Garcia was pretty damn good, and so was Kaepernick. But he clearly is the most well-rounded quarterback they've had in 25 years. Now, does that mean give him $200 million? He's still got to do it longer than he's done it. We got time. But this argument, like, he's fucking damn good. He's not Josh Allen. He can't move like Lamar Jackson. He doesn't have an arm like Patrick Mahomes. But for the 49ers, he's pretty freaking sweet. And I think that's how you talk about it in the NFL. Yet, like you said, in this highlight generation, it's like, oh, look at this. Look at these 7 dunks. It's like, yeah, well, he can't shoot a lick, and he doesn't try on defense. So no good team wants the guy. But I could show you a highlight. In the basketball's king of that. Highlight packages, make a guy look good. And football has kind of turned in on that a little bit with social media. Not a football question, but I heard you give a toast to your landscaper who happened to go to jail a while back. Did he ever get out? And did you ever get your lawn taken care of? Again, love the show. My former landscaper got deported, and it sucked because I really liked him and he was awesome, and he was putting all these trees in all these ficus trees in my backyard. So basically none of my neighbors can be able to see in. They're going to be like 15-foot ficus trees. And he had dug all the holes, but we had to wait because it was so hot in Arizona. He said they were going to die. And then when I was going to have him install the ficus trees, I couldn't get a hold of him. Somehow, through my girlfriend's friend who introduced him to us, got a hold of his wife, and he was in jail in Tucson, Arizona. And now he's in Mexico. Luckily, the guy that moved me into my house, I hit him up, asked him if he knew anybody. He said his cousin was a landscaper. So now Jorge installed the ficus trees, did a good job. I'm going to have him do the front yard. He was really hammering me on like, let's do the front yard. It's like, Jorge, I've just spent a lot of money on a remodel. Let's just take a deep breath. I don't care that much about the front yard right now, but I did get a new landscaper, and yeah, I don't even want to say my guy's name because he's gone, and it makes me sad because I like that guy a lot. He was fucking awesome. And honestly, he wouldn't charge me enough. I used to say like, no, I'm going to pay you more. Good life lesson. I think a lot of people don't realize like you probably can charge a little more than you think if you do a good job, especially if you're like an independent contractor. You know, I think sometimes people lowball themselves because they're afraid that like I don't even know, like I can't do the work. If you can, like if you're gonna charge me, you know, if this is 4,500, like I was like 4,500. It's like shit. I thought it was gonna be like $8,000. NFL fans, it's time to unwrap nonstop football action. This holiday season, throw down on the big matchups with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. This week, new customers can bet just $5 on the NFL and score $150 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook now with code JOHN, J-O-H-N. New customers can bet $5 on the NFL action to score $150 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. I'm a diehard Bucs fan, and this team is always terrible, then magically a Super Bowl winning team once every 20 years. I would take this over being a team that is always 500, but the Bucs are heading toward an era of being okay in a bad division. Obviously, for the business, is it better to be relevant even if you have no chance at a Super Bowl? But as a fan, I'd rather build something that has real potential. Baker and Bowles will never be the worst, but they're never going to be great. Should the Bucs re-sign Baker for something? Yes, in theory, in a perfect world, you would rather get a team that can just rattle off 11, 12 wins for like 5 straight years. That's perfect world. But sometimes the world isn't perfect. You sucked forever. You got Tom. You became really relevant. And now this team has a chance to make the playoffs and win the division. If you win the division without Tom Brady and you go over 500, it's a very successful year. You get to host a playoff game, even if you lose to the Cowboys or the Eagles. So what? Like and all you can deal with is what you have. What are you supposed to do? Blow it up, trade everyone, get rid of everybody? Like you have some pieces. You have some really good veteran players. And I think Baker will be back. what was he, 1 year, 4 or 5 million? If he wins 2 of the last 3 games, I think he's back 1 year, 12 million, 1 year, 15 million. And you just kind of figure it out year by year as you're building toward the future. I think you can kind of do both at once. But sucking sucks because there's no guarantee that if you bottom out and just blow, that you're just going to turn it around and be good. That's just not how it works, right? We see a lot of teams just bottom out and they stay bad. I think the ceiling, as a Seahawks fan, I think the ceiling for this team can be high, but it seems we have reached the ceiling with Geno and Locke. If Seattle doesn't make the playoffs, it might be a shorter jump to the top 10, but if they go on a run and somehow make the playoffs, what a potential trade would need to get their quarterback. Well, the Chiefs did it years ago to get Mahomes, right? Was he the 10th or 12th pick? I always get him and Deshaun Watson mixed up, right? Trubisky went 2, which is crazy. And I think, did Deshaun go 10 and Mahomes went 12 or vice versa? But they came up from the 20s and they gave, I think, a future one and some, I forget the exact trade, but I think you come up at 21 to pick 10 for next year's one and some other stuff. But I think for every Mahomes and even Deshaun with the Texans, it doesn't work out a lot. Now, it's pretty risky. And you're seeing a lot of guys around the league like Gardner Minshew, Jake Browning. Do you have to do that? Like, can you win games with Geno and Drew Lock? Now, if you love the guy, put all your chips in the middle of the table. Never forget, I was telling my girlfriend this. The reason Drew Lock's on the team, she's like, who is this guy? I'm like, well, they got him back. A lot of you guys know it. Because John Schneider liked the guy. I'll guarantee you this. John Schneider had a first-round grade on that guy coming out of college. I'll promise you that. Because he wanted him in that trade. He liked him because I know the type of players he likes. He loved Josh Allen. Like he likes physically gifted quarterbacks, and that's what Drew Lock is. And yeah, so it wouldn't shock if Drew plays again. They keep winning games with him. I could see them kind of maybe giving him a year. Do you think the Colts have a chance of making the playoffs, or do you believe they would be a team out? Buffalo and the Texans on the rise, the Jaguars slipping. Week 18 against the Texans seems like it will decide it all. If somehow they get in, do you think they have a chance against the 2 seed? No, I don't. I mean, the 2 seed probably be the Chiefs. So I would say no. I think the Bills are going to win that division. So it would be the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills. What division am I missing? And the South, which who knows? So I would say I think you guys are one and done. I really do. Awesome year. I mean, we all thought you were going to suck once the quarterback got injured. Who cares? Now, I actually don't think the Texans have a bunch of injuries. You know, I think CJ would be back this week, but I think all those teams are kind of the same, right? And the Jags are in shambles. I haven't looked at your schedule, but been watching for a long time now. Question for the pod. Do you think any of the backups doing well this year have a chance to be the starting job next year? Browning, Gardner Minshew, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito. DeVito, no. Lock, unlikely. I would say that I don't see how Minshew wouldn't be a starter somewhere. He wouldn't necessarily start in Indy if the quarterback's healthy, right? Just because you invest that much into the quarterback, he's going to play. But I think, if Baker can be a starting quarterback somewhere, you would think Minshew would get more money. So, like, why wouldn't the Patriots be interested? Why? I mean, a lot of these teams, Minnesota, what's their quarterback situation, right? I mean, there are going to be teams that, why wouldn't Atlanta want Gardner Minshew over what they got? So, yeah, I think Gardner Minshew's a starter next year. I'm probably still TBD on Browning. To me, what still makes sense for Browning is probably like 2 years, $10 million to be Joe Burrow's backup. But I guess you never know. All it takes is one person to like him. I was wondering if you could discuss on your next mailbag episode some stories, insights on being a junior employee on a professional football team. I'm currently a junior employee at a financial service company and struggle with getting noticed by management and forging a career path. If you could share any advice, why I can't speak for financial group, but like when you're the lowest guy on the totem pole in an NFL office, there aren't that many people there. So, the coaching staff at the time had however many guys, offense, defense, and in-office scouts, it was like Howie, a couple pro scouts. So you know everyone pretty quickly on a first name basis. So it's pretty easy once you start. My number one advice: say yes to everything. Anyone that needs help, do it. And basically on the organizational chart, everyone's above you. So help anyone to do anything. And I don't know how many people are in your office, but it's just pretty easy to become close. Like developing personal relationships always helps, right? So it's easy to get to know these guys when you're helping them do stuff nonstop, whether it's stuff for the special teams coach, whether it's the offensive coordinator, whether it's the GM. We spend so much time together that you just do whatever you can. And a lot of it's like picking people up at the airport, getting coffee, just there's a fine balance. And listen, you got to have instincts on this from being like a kiss ass and just refusing to be denied and just do whatever it takes to not just get noticed. And I guess when I looking back, I just did whatever I was told and did it to the best of my ability. Right. You don't want to like go too far past like this guy's trying a little hard. So I can't speak to how it works in the financial services. They're probably not going to ask you for the next great stock, right? But can you everything you need to do for the guys that you answer to, I would say do to the best of your ability and be early, stay late. Listen, FaceTime is over. Like as you get older, you realize it's kind of stupid. When you're young, it matters. You want to be known as like this guy just is fucking always here. And it's easier when you're younger and you don't have a family or whatever. But I would say everything you're given, try to make it an A plus. And if you can, if you see opportunities to go above and beyond, do it. But there's not like every interpersonal office dynamic is a little different. Some leaders are more personal than others. Some are just standoffish and don't give a shit about you. You just got to find people in the building who you think are talented or are going places. And if it's not the CEO, it maybe it's a vice president or something, and just try to develop a personal relationship and let them know like I want to be sitting where you're sitting. What can I do? That also ask people that you work around advice. People love their ego stroked. So like ask them their story, ask them how they got to where they're at. People like hearing that stuff. People like telling you that stuff. People like being asked how they became successful. So that's always kind of an easy one. Cause like, trying to do some project and then hand it to the CEO, like, hey, I think these are the whatever your industry is, can go bad too. It might not look great. They might disagree with you. Pretty risky. But I think just getting to know people and picking their brain on what they did to move up the ladder is probably the easiest and safest tactic. Because one thing when you're the lowest guy, taking huge risks can be pretty risky. Like I'm all for being a big risk taker, but you can turn people off pretty quickly and it can backfire in your face. So there's just a fine line of like pushing the envelope and like kind of staying in your lane because most people don't like the guy that's trying to be like a hero when he's like 23-year-old, with some economics degree from, some state school. But also people appreciate, ambitious people. So you got to strike the balance. I think the easiest way is just get in with people and ask them and pick their brain and just try to, forge a real relationship. A real relationship. That would probably be my best advice. Okay, last question. Massive Packer fan. What do the Packers do with this defense? Barry is terrible and should not be on the staff next year. Where he is, who do the Packers turn to as a defensive coordinator? Well, I think it depends who gets fired this year, right? Like if Belichick gets fired, he's not going to be an option. But is Todd Bowles available? Because last year they had, right, what's his name with the Browns? Jim Schwartz. Guy's clearly a pretty good defensive coordinator. Vic Fangio was available last year. Pretty good defensive coordinator. So you got to get guys that work, that are good. Like is Wink Martindale still on the Giants next year? Or does him and Brian Daboll run their course? Because if he's available, all over him. I need to get a guy with pelts on the wall. I need to get a guy that knows what he's doing. Because that game on Sunday morning for me on the West Coast was pretty bad. I think it was the highest passer rating by an opposing player in the history of Lambeau Field. And if you just watched it, you're like, It's one thing if like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady in their prime lights you up. Baker Mayfield, that was bad. And listen, he could have got rid of him last year and he didn't. And he stuck with his boy. So it's on Matt LaFleur to make a tough decision and fire the guy. And then the Packers have to give him $4 or $5 million to go hire the best guy in the market. Because if he'll do that, then they'll be okay. But if they're like, we'll give you $2 million, because I'll promise you this, Joe Barry's probably one of the lower paid defensive coordinators in the league. If you have one of the lower paid defensive coordinators in the league, like you can't really complain when your defense looks shitty. You got to pay a premium for a premium. And that's what the top defense, if Todd Bowles, let's say the Bucs lose out, Todd Bowles gets fired. Todd Bowles isn't costing you Joe Barry money. He's costing you 2x that, maybe 3x that. Like, would you give Todd Bowles $5.5 million to be your defensive coordinator? Well, do you want to be good on defense or not? Because if you do, then yeah, pay him.